True crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffindaffer. I have over 28 years of federal investigative experience, and I'm so excited to be with you here today. We're going to cuss. We're going to discuss some crimes. We're specifically going to focus on some missing that are either in the news right now or that, quite frankly, I'm seeing through from beginning to end. I'm looking over there at chat, and I have to be honest with you. Ever since I turned a particular age, it's kind of old, I cannot see up close anymore. That's why I have to wear my readers. So I'm going to be addressing the chat. I also wanted to say, to get your questions and feedback, but I just love seeing all these icons up there. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the mods that hopefully do a really good job of just keeping an environment that's easy to work in. I mean, all that I ask, I don't care if you agree or disagree. It's just about doing it respectfully. I'll do it respectfully. Just ask everybody to be respectful. And, what I love about our chats, particularly on the John O'Keefe case, and there may only be 70, 80, 90 people in there chatting. But you know what? Everyone is so smart. Like I read different people's views and I'm like, oh God, that's a good point. That's something to think about. Oh, that's exactly, right on point, whatever it might be. So anyway, there's STS, it's a podcast, and I think they say best guess. I'm going to say our show has the best people in chat. All right. I said, all right, we're going to move on because I like to get through these quickly. I know it's really important to get down to business. So we're going to do that. I want to start out with Miya Tucker-Rude. Now, for those who don't remember Miya, Miya is or was an 8-month-old baby that people were looking for in Kentucky. She actually went missing in April, but wasn't reported missing until May. Very recently, her parents, her grandparents, a lot of arrests were made. And authorities served a search warrant at her parents' house. Now, interestingly enough, the situation inside the house was so dangerous for officers and canines that they had to make it safe before they could enter. So they searched the grounds, they searched a wooded area. You can imagine that a lot of people would, if they were going to dispose of a body, dispose of them in the grounds or wooded area. But once law enforcement made entry, they discovered Miya wrapped in plastic bags, blanket over her, laying in basically just a heap of garbage, debris, items that were in that house. Now, for those of you who have never worked or been inside, I'm just going to call it for what it is. Please don't take this. I don't mean it derogatorily. I don't know how else to describe it, but people who are completely and totally hooked on methamphetamine. It's a totally different animal than people that are hooked on cocaine, crack, Adderall, Rohypnol, heroin, marijuana, all the other drugs that takes people's lives or can away from them, where they're so addicted that that's all they do. The meth world is very different. I'm just going to give you a couple quick stories. I don't want to belabor the point too much, but one meth addict that we went after, he was part of the Serenos. That's a drug. It's a gang, but they also transport methamphetamine. Specifically, this group was a methamphetamine transportation group. And anyway, that's when I was working with the gang unit, myself and 2 gang detectives and a couple enforcement officers. We received word about this because the threshold of meth, we knew there was going to be at least 2 to 3 pounds there, if not more. That's why federally, when you're detached to a drug unit, you bring in the teeth of the federal government, not only all the resources that I was the only FBI agent attached that, we could bring to bear, the Bureau, but also manpower, also just the fact that when you're involved in these cases, you bring your different experiences with you so that hopefully you don't make mistakes because you've already made them. We went into this apartment. He did drop the drugs, or we got the drugs. This guy was so hopped up on meth. He literally, I was chasing him, ran out of the balcony. I believe it was third story, but it might have been second story. It must have been a second story. And literally jumped out of the balcony and survived. Like jumped out, didn't hit the balcony before him. That's why I'm confused whether it was second or third. Maybe there was basement first, second. You would think he would die from a third, but there was a balcony below him that he missed. He propelled himself past that and took off. We ended up getting him. He's serving 20 years, and he was sentenced and ended up going to Colorado to their max facility, which is really cool, like under this mountain. In any event, the supernatural ways these people can actually act on the drug, their power, their strength, their stamina, their ability to be hurt and not feel it. It's like no other drug. It's seriously a super drug, methamphetamine. Then during the time we were there processing the scene and everything, a lady came in. She had 3 children, and I was interviewing her, right? Because she was there to pick up meth, to get her fix, if you will. Even though he was dealing in larger quantities, she was coming to get a smaller quantity. 3 kids at home, so she told me. She was so whacked out, begging me on me, like grabbing my legs. Please, please, please just give it to me. Please, please. Out of her mind. Leaving her 3 kids at home. Whacked out beyond belief. I've just seen things with that drug I've never seen with any other drug and in and around any other drug. I don't want to bore you with any other stories. Those are just 2 off the top of my head because that was the exact same case, but had a Laotian Crypt case, multiple other cases, and it's just a different drug. So anyway, when you go into these places, you have to imagine, the show Hoarders, which many of you have seen. Imagine that, but infuse in there drugs, needles. Some people are cooks, so it's actually can be dangerous in that regard, not just the smell. And by the way, if people are wondering what it smells like a cat box, like the ammonia smell from a cat box. So just imagine entering a house with, it's just cat litter and feces, and how a cat box would smell if you put it in a small closet and didn't empty it for months, and then you opened it and you smelled it. That's what these houses smell like. It's so gross. But anyway, I believe from the description of the officers, that's the kind of place we were talking about here. The other problem is the people that are so hooked on these drugs, they don't care about anything but that high and that euphoria. So they don't do the dishes. They don't clean up after themselves. They certainly can't take care of a baby. And I want to say this too. I believe the date, and this is totally from my memory, but I believe it was May 31st. She was finally, that date can't be right. In any event, she was actually, meaning Miya, was held at the hospital. Why? Because when they tested her umbilical cord, it was filled with meth. I brought this up, I think, last time we talked. Should parents be able to leave the hospital with their child when it is known that they're addicts? Shouldn't CPS have been called? Shouldn't they have gone to that residence? Shouldn't they have checked out the environment they were releasing an infant into? I say yes. I say that infants' rights are worth more then the rights of the parent. At that point, he was not willing to keep herself or himself clean of drug usage. But anyway, last time we talked, I don't think we had these results, but Miya was indeed found inside the house in these conditions. And no charges have been brought yet in terms of homicide or murder. We don't know. The autopsy has not been published to the public. That's the word. I'm going to be very careful now between the use of the word released, meaning released to law enforcement from the ME's office, as opposed to published for the public to see. So it has not been public or published, nor has law enforcement made any announcements regarding the autopsy, at least not when I looked, which was just an hour or so ago. So I believe we're still waiting on those results to see how the baby died and what those charges could mean for all the individuals already in jail. Okay, want to move on and talk about Caleb Harris. Caleb Harris, for those of you who don't know, was a young man attending Texas A&M at Corpus Christi in Texas. Just kind of one of those guys that he's so handsome, the big smile. He had the sun-kissed skin, I suppose you could say, brown. His hair oscillated kind of like mine. When it's summertime, I get all blonded up. I don't pay anybody to do that. I think that would ruin your hair. I probably ruin it enough playing tennis that this is what happens, get light. But then in the winters, it tends to get darker because I see a little less sunshine. That's this kid in terms of his hair, kind of blonde. And then, you see him with dark hair. In any event, considered kind of like an all-American guy. He liked to fish. He liked to hunt. I've posted lots of pictures that the family has sent me privately, pictures with the family so that people can know. We did a whole segment with the family, 6 members of that family, where they got to talk about Caleb and really try to bring him to life, because unfortunately that case in the media spotlight has just dimmed. I don't really know why. Why does a case at one end of the spectrum, Gabby Petito, just completely catch fire with everybody? And why does a case like Caleb Harris just dim out very early on? Spoke to Randy's Father's Day, Sunday, yesterday. And so Tony is no longer representing the family. I've always talked directly to Randy, but initially he had asked certainly for Tony to be kept in the loop, because Tony was representing that family. I think Randy really worried about saying some sort of misstep in the media or just having some guidance. And quite frankly, Tony was a friend of his. They're both in the same business, and that's how we knew him. And Tony offered, hey, listen, I'll be your media person. And that's how that all started. I know that's for a fact. I talked with Randy about this last night. I shouldn't say talked. We communicated about this because we were text messaging. And I really, truly believe that Tony had the best intentions toward Caleb. He pivoted to a different case, Sebastian Rogers case, working for Seth in a non-paid capacity, is my understanding. And so he's completely out of Caleb's case. There's no affiliation anymore. But I did want to say that I wish Caleb's case could be brought more to the spotlight. Why? Because his case could actually be solved. Yes, he disappeared at 3 a.m., a difficult time, but there were people that were in a position to see him. There were people that he possibly met with, we communicated with. There's leads. There are leads in this case. I'm hoping that law enforcement will release some of this lead information sooner rather than later. I think it would be helpful. I think the community there in Corpus Christi, even though his flyers and his name and everything are everywhere, it just can't hurt when you get social media involved. Sometimes people under the umbrella of anonymity will say things they might not normally say, and that could lead to a positive lead that really could be fruitful. But as it is right now, things are status quo. Unfortunately, there's nothing that's been released this week. There will be another meeting this week. I've personally spoke with law enforcement. I know they really, really care about the Caleb Harris case. They're working with the FBI, who's intricately involved. Secret Service is involved from the standpoint of they'll do a particular task, which they've already done concerning cell phone digital retrieval of evidence. There was a lot of problems with subpoenaed information that went out that took weeks to return. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I was just such a squeaky wheel as an agent. I mean, I'm telling you, I had those the people that actually worked in whatever it was, AT&T, T-Mobile, on speed dial, not the supervisors or this and that, but the person who actually, presses a few buttons and gets the machine to spit out a week's worth of data. That's literally how easy it is. But in any event, they had a lot going on. There was a lot that was delayed in terms of those records. So unfortunately, I feel like that case is just stuck. But law enforcement says, no, they do have some leads, and they may be coming forward in time if they end up in a dead end. So I guess it's good news that they're not in a dead end yet. As soon as they get into a dead end, I think Randy will call me, and we will certainly get that message out. And I know law enforcement will too, whatever that message might be. All right. I want to talk about, now we're going to move on to Sebastian Rogers. Whew, Sebastian Rogers. So I just want to talk about a couple of new things that have come up. I recently saw a picture. It's kind of circulating on social media. It's been about 4 days since I first saw it. I did not publish it because it was kind of hazy and dark, but a supposed, Sebastian lookalike in Wisconsin. No information regarding any true legitimacy on that. So because of that, I didn't publish it. On the other situation, we actually had people go out there. We could verify at least that the place wasn't altered. We knew that there were cameras out there. Certainly, it was such a lookalike situation. But anyway, as I get something, if I vet it and truly believe it could be legitimate, I certainly do put that out there. In this case, on this Wisconsin photo, I'm sort of waiting to see if anything more comes forward. I'm sure some of you can find it on social media if you wanted to take a look. Secondarily, there's been a release of a post that was put forth by purportedly a cousin of Chris Proudfoot that is not saying very nice things. They didn't want to come forward, but they felt obligated, and they said some things that weren't, that were concerning. Law enforcement, I know, has that. I know they're working on it to vet it. So that's what we have there. I mean, listen, there's a laundry list of people who will say that Chris Proudfoot isn't a good guy, right? I mean, we've heard Chris Proudfoot say things, and we've seen reports. So we know that, there's some blemishes at best regarding him, but still no movement on Sebastian Rogers. I just ask, even though I know it probably gets repetitive and redundant on your social media platforms, whether it's TikTok or Twitter or Instagram, please continue. I try to at least once a week, if not more, just show his name and his face and talk about the situation, because you just never know when it might land on somebody that never knew about it. We live in this true crime bubble and in this bubble of newsies, right? I'm a newsie. I get up, I'm up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I'm scrubbing different articles and looking at stuff. My wonderful intern now is scrubbing some articles for me. She's been great. I mean, I give her a laundry list of honeydews, and she just is all over it. University of Michigan, I'm not at all surprised. It's a great university. Wait a minute. I want to see something. Thank you, Barb. Oh, so sweet. Overland Park. My gosh, my sister lived there and I lived in Olathe. So thank you for that. Overland Park is God's country. It's beautiful there. Thank you. Just wanted to say that before it scrolled up and I couldn't get back to it. But in any event, Sebastian Rogers, for us to continue to show his name and face, it might just land with somebody who knows something. I think that's all I'll say about that. A lot of concerns, but at this point, there is nothing that proves he was killed in that house. There was nothing to prove he left that house. So sadly, we're a little bit on back to square one on him, but they continue to work. Now, that brings me to the case that I really, really wanted to get into just a little bit tonight. Sorry, I've had something in my eye since earlier. I do not know what it is. So if I'm blinking or my eyes are watering, that's what that's all about. But Summer Wells. So, the Summer Wells case, I was looking at all this footage over, today in and out of the Karen Reed trial. And Summer Wells went missing. And for it recently, TBI, because it's an anniversary situation, came out with a statement, that they basically haven't found anything in terms of her abduction and that she might have walked away. I just call baloney on all of that. I've been very vocal about this case from the beginning. I looked at the 5-month mark, and Brian Inton went out to her house, went to that county, talked to the sheriff's office, talked to TBI. You know what? Back then they said, listen, we don't have anything. I mean, unless something comes in, we're not working it. I posted on my Twitter, the lead investigator saying exactly that. Case is cold meaning I'm not out there, working it on a daily basis. If something comes in, I'll run it down. But it's basically completely cold. And this will always be my belief. Candace, Grandis, and Don Wells know what happened to that little girl. I want to just go through Candace's statements, 3 of Candace's statements. 1, I was taking a walk when she disappeared. 2, I dropped her off at the house. We were at Grandis's house planting plants. I remember taking a picture of the pot, that they were supposedly planting in. None of it added up. And she got a candy from Grandis. And then this part was the part that was really a kicker for me. I walked her from Grandis, who's on their property, to their main house. Listen, that girl ran around. There's so many pictures of her. She didn't need walked from one house to another. I told the boys, I love this too. I told the boys to watch her. This just wasn't that kind of environment, in my opinion. And I base that on the fact the condition of the house, which we all saw the interior of the house, combined with the fact that children were removed from CPS. And I think there it's not called CPS though, so forgive me if I said the wrong name. But in Tennessee, basically their Child Protective Services Division came in and took those boys out by the grace of God. So they were out of there. But anyway, she also made up that contention. Candace has never kept her story straight. She said that intruders came in. Well, as I recall, and I hope we hear from somebody in chat that might recall this with me, there was a couch in front of that door that's down low that exited, that's, they could have came in through there. Have you seen that house? When you look at the grounds and everything, there were dogs everywhere, like barking, dogs that nobody, you would never go up to a house like this and not worry that you would be in peril just from dogs. It's wooded, difficult. So there's no chance, in my opinion, that a stranger abduction occurred here, that somebody just happened onto that property, somehow got past the dogs, somehow got in the door that was blocked by the couch, and somehow just happened to know that Summer Wells was going to be down in the basement. That is a no-go for me. It didn't happen. I'm not believing it. If it ended up that it happened, we could discuss that. I know some people have brought up, well, listen, this happened in this case and it happened in this case. There's a few rare things. This is the difference between those cases that you're referring to. Those cases didn't have parents that were addicts, that had multiple domestic violent police reports called in on them for their actions. This is a case where Don Wells tried to sell his children for drugs. We know that because there is testimony of that from his sister. This is a situation where Don Wells is accused of sexually molesting a little girl, a young girl, I should say. This is a case of individuals that I believe are highly suspect in their treatment of their other children. Thus, they don't have any of their children back. In the statements that they made afterwards, listen, I listened to a recording of Don Wells where he says, when she disappeared, we were, however many feet away. He used the word we, and it was a spontaneous utterance. In the Bureau, as an investigator, when I hear spontaneous utterances, I know that is a clue that they're telling the truth. When people are initially confronted on crimes, they tend to say truthful statements. When they don't have lawyers around, when they're not thinking about it, when they haven't really had time to process everything, and they make these utterances. That's what he said. I know he was supposed to be at work. I know that's supposedly what is purported to be the truth. I'm just telling you what Don Wells said. All sorts of problems with his statements. If you listen, and it's brutal, I did it back then. I only listened to a couple things today, but everything they came out and said on YouTube, private, it is unbelievable, the statements they made. And I really, if you want to watch something on the Wells, please watch their first interview. This is the one where Candace has very short hair. I believe she's in a purple shirt. She's in a tank top. I remember the color being purple for some reason. And she's sitting there with Don. I should say this is the first one with Don and Candace, because for a while, Don came out and said some different things. And, he was with his sons in one, at least one of his sons in one. But I'm talking about the one with Candace. She's definitely, in my opinion, from my experience, completely drugged out. And she's just like, oh, I guess a stranger must have taken her. I mean, just definitely definitely highly medicated. Look at what Dawn wrote, what Dawn said early on, her being dead, her being in heaven, her being gone. These are statements and admissions that people make, in my opinion, when they know what happened to their child and they know their child isn't here anymore. If it comes out that a stranger took her, I will own these statements I'm making right now, and that I've consistently made since the minute she was abducted. You can watch on Marnie Hughes on News Nation. I have not deviated because the evidence hasn't deviated. It hasn't been strong enough, obviously, to make an arrest. But you know what has been strong enough to make an arrest? And I do not understand authorities. They did not arrest, the SO's office, the sheriff's office did not arrest Don and Candace for neglect and child endangerment in that house. So it was decided the children were in such poor care and in such a poor environment, they had to remove them. But we're not going to make any charges. That is almost unheard of in my experience. fired up about this case, you guys. And quite frankly, I see Sebastian Rogers going the exact same trajectory. I pointed this out a long time ago. It's just something we're seeing. It's going in the same trajectory. But in Sebastian's case, I do at least think there's a chance he walked away. Sebastian was on the spectrum. And in my experience with people who are on the spectrum, they can leave their residences and wander at different times of the evening than one might expect from someone that might plan it out more, more spontaneous. So in that regard, I really do have to have some hope. I do have some hope that Sebastian, like Connor Jack Oswald, that I brought up a lot, walked away and is somewhere. And then obviously at some point, maybe got picked up by somebody, established some sort of relationship with somebody. I don't know. When I say relationship, somebody befriended him in some way. That is the best we can hope for right now. He hasn't been found. He's not in the waterways. He's not in the ponds. He's not in any residence there. At least if we're to believe that law enforcement did their job and did the proper checks, which means literally going from door to door and asking permission to search right away, asking for crawl spaces. We heard that. I posted it on my Twitter on what came over the radios, a lot of the radio communication early on. So we know they were going door to door. He hasn't been found in the vicinity that he could walk. And so let's hope that he is alive. Again, I'm hoping it's a Connor Jack Oswald case, but I realize it may not be. And let's hope it doesn't end up being a Summer Wells situation, because we don't need another Summer Wells situation that no answers will be known, at least for some period of time. I'd like to think that someday we get some answers in that case, but I just don't know if we'll ever see that based on what we've seen so far. I posted today, which some of you who are on Twitter, it's at Coffindaffer FBI. I know a lot of people on YouTube don't do Twitter, and Twitter don't necessarily go on YouTube. But I posted today about Lawson, who is the sheriff in the county where Summer Wells went missing, that his son, and this was from many months ago, but I just reposted it today as a reminder, that his son was convicted of sexual assault and got 1 year. I don't even think it was 1 year. I need to look back at that. Maybe it was just under a year. That's all he got. And he has to register as a sex offender. How does that happen? I'll tell you, because your dad's the sheriff, and the sheriff is good friends with the undersheriff, is good, obviously knows his police force, obviously knows the judges and prosecutors and things like this. I'm not talking about some vast corruption and cover up. What I'm talking about is there are bad eggs and bad seeds. And all I had to do was look at the fact of his son and what that conviction yielded for him in terms of a sentence. And that told me what I needed to know about the county we were dealing with, combined with the fact that they never charged the Wellses for neglect or child endangerment or anything, yet they had enough proof to get them out of the house and keep them out all these years later. All right. Summer Wells is a case. It was the second case that I started getting involved with after Gabby Petito. I mean, I was immersed in the Summer Wells case. I had to actually look back at some of my tweets and look back at some of the media coverage to kind of get caught up and to recall all that existed in that case early on. Sadly, I don't think there's going to be a good outcome with finding Summer Wells. I'm just still keep hope and prayers, though, that Sebastian will be found. All right, I'm going to look at your comments. Let's see. That's called corruption, Mike says. Yes, I have to agree in that circumstance. can I confirm that cheap hot dogs at T Rev bought? I did not know about that. If that happened, I want to say this though. The Sebastian Rogers case has become, I don't know how to say this nicely, worse than a circus. It is a hot mess with all the extracurricular stuff going on. It's just, if parents want to know how to act when your child goes missing, this is my recommendation. You don't really need someone to tell you how to act. You don't. Oh, and somebody actually sent me on Twitter, basically an article regarding all the people trying to grift and trying to make money off of people that go missing and getting their names, and you know, whether it's setting up a GoFundMe or otherwise using a missing person to help their situation, whether they're a private investigator, whether they're a person who represents missing people. When did that ever start, by the way? People who represent the families of missing people. I mean, I get if you have an attorney that does, but and I'm not saying anything bad. I'm not pointing the finger at anybody because I know that's how this is going to be taken. I know Riley Strains had a family friend. Obviously, Randy had a family friend try to help. And I can only imagine you're overwhelmed with the grief and the concern, and you're dealing with law enforcement. Your life's been turned upside down. You can't work. You're trying to find your child, and you just want somebody to handle what you should say to the media. This is my recommendation. Watch the Petitos, how they responded to Gabby Petito being gone. Just watch those first couple of press conferences. I'm not saying everybody acts alike, but I'm saying if you want to garner help from citizenry, if you want them to understand your situation, don't sling mud against your former partner. Don't sling mud against the parent of your child that's missing. Don't go on platforms that are there to stir up drama and histrionics and bring the worst out in you, and they're just hoping you say something juicy and scintillating. Don't do it. Don't do it. Stick with mainstream media. Start a YouTube channel of your own if you want, where you bring forth your child's situation. Go to trusted YouTubers and creators and platforms that you know aren't making money. Their agenda is to be an advocate for the missing, and they have a track record for that. There's several on YouTube and many platforms that are like that, but unfortunately there are dozens of platforms that aren't, and they range from horrible to even more horrible. So that's what should happen. And Randy is doing a fabulous job, doing his best, being an honest father, just trying to get his message out about his son. So anyway, off that soapbox. Yes, can I speak to how Sebastian could walk out that door without being seen? I mean, it's such a good question because, first of all, it was in the middle of the night. The cameras, it depends on the angles that you go out. But I mean, you make a great point. We know the dogs supposedly were in the kennel. How did he get out in the middle of the night? I mean, it can happen. Many of you saw that footage, right? The footage of the lights that ended up being the trash truck lights. That's the trash truck lights, by the way. I've seen actually some people go on and say, oh, it wasn't. Those were the people stealing them. No. It's the trash truck lights. Listen to law enforcement. I've seen enhancements of that video. It's the trash truck. He supposedly had a flashlight, but this wasn't like a mag light. this was my understanding is something that's kind of on your little key ring, a smaller light. That's my understanding of it. Something that may or may not have been detected. I also tell people this, especially when I'm talking about self-defense and home protection and things. Whenever I teach my classes, I say, when you're asleep at night, your eyelids are shut, you are so used to the dark at that point, right? So I always tell everybody, don't turn on your lights, because now you have made an even field with the bad guy. You know where your lights are, you know where your furniture is, you know where your escape routes are. The minute you illuminate everything, first of all, you have illuminated yourself if they have a gun or something. So now you've just put the target on yourself. And secondarily, you've made the playing field more equal, because now they can see, and you could already see in those dark conditions, plus you know your house. So my point is Sebastian Rogers, it was dark. His eyesight could have been well adjusted to the dark and just the ambient light from other people's houses, or from lighting on the street, and so on and so forth. So maybe he didn't even turn on this little, I understand it to be like a little flashlight that would attach to a key ring situation. If that's the case, you know, it wouldn't have necessarily been caught in those shadows. I mean, from the pictures I've seen, it was really dark in and around his house. All right, let me see if I see anything else. Let's see. Let's see. Yes, good to have everyone here. Let's see. All right. I don't have any particular questions. Yeah, I love that, Wendy. It's so true. You can walk around your 2 acres without a light, but it took years to master, right? But of course, he doesn't have acres. He just has this small area that he knows, and he's around and has been around. So there's no absolute answer. I just know it's possible. I just know it's possible that he could have walked out of that house and is gone, but could be found. That is it for Summer, Sebastian, for Miya, and for Caleb. I want to say I really appreciate you spending some time here on your Monday night with me. And if you like what you saw, hopefully you'll subscribe. Hopefully you'll like the presentation, and maybe even become a member. Some of the interviews that I do with FBI agents that are the uncut versions that can kind of go astray, those are in the members only. And then also I release early stuff in the members only, before other videos. My mods kind of keep me on track with all of that, because this is all very new to me. But I just want to thank you for joining. Tomorrow, we're going to continue to broadcast on Twitter and on my platform, the Officer John O'Keefe case. And I call it the Officer John O'Keefe trial. Why? People have gotten backlash about that. He's not on trial. He's not on trial. No, but it's about justice for John O'Keefe. And so I'll continue to call it the John O'Keefe trial, because unfortunately his name and who he was and everything he meant to so many people gets lost, because that is another case that's like the Sebastian Rogers of the true crime world. Sebastian Rogers case is a hot mess in the missing community. The John O'Keefe case is a hot mess in the true crime community, because it's just, it's one of the worst cases I've ever seen in terms of bastardizing evidence, in terms of police making errors that unfortunately, in my opinion, are blown up, but that also have a lead detective involved, that even though he didn't collect most of the evidence, he didn't even touch most of the evidence, he wasn't even involved without a partner in any part of the case at all, he made statements that are reprehensible, pretty much unforgivable. And I just hope he will be punished. So for those of you thinking he's going to just get away with it, he's not. And his career is ruined, in my opinion, because he's established giglio, which makes a person almost impossible for them to ever testify again without all of this coming up and without his judgment errors coming into play. And when I say his judgment errors, I'm not talking about his investigation, because that, by all accounts, had no issues. What had issues was, and when I say didn't have issues, I mean, as an example, the forensics evidence that is in play, that to me is the nail in the coffin on this case, the tail light that's embedded in the shirt, the DNA on the tail light, the hair from likely his forearm being smashed into that cold and wet surface, and being John O'Keefe's right where he was hit. The confession by the person that hit him, saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, overheard by numerous people, her going on television and saying, I guess I could have clipped him, and saying, and left him incapacitated, and in his drunkenness, he passed out. I mean, I could go on and on with statements, but my point is, on the John O'Keefe case, it mirrors the Sebastian Rogers case in terms of it just feels dirty every time I talk about that case and listen and watch all the noise around the body of facts that exist in that case. So anyway, we'll be televising it, or not televising it, streaming it, myself and Yellow Cottage Tales, who's really great. He's a bartender, former bartender, and now, he's taken a huge interest in this case. And so it's really interesting case to talk about. And Kate Peter, who is from that area, knows so many of the players in this intimately. I mean, like friends with many of the players, and really is an encyclopedia of facts regarding the case from the inception of this case. Anyway, we talk on and off, but mostly it's just there so you can see the testimony, not me tell you about it or Kevin tell you about it or, Court TV tell you about it, but you can watch it. You can watch segments and then glean for yourself what you will. I think that's just really important to have uncut testimony for people to watch. All right, I'm going to make sure, because stuff keeps coming out. Okay. All right. There we go. That's it. Thank you so much. And till next time, may justice be served.